Of course, my wife, she was born with a tremendous gift of being able to play the piano. When she was 4 years old, she went to a Sunday night service with her parents, and the pianist was not there, and so they said, well, we'll have to sing without a piano player tonight. And then Violet's mother said, oh, yeah. Violet, she was 4 years old, Violet can play the piano. She gets on the piano bench, and then he said, well, do you need music? No, you just start singing and I'll start playing. And then Bun, as he grew up, I think he was 8 or 10 years old, he was always kind of at the kitchen table, he was always doing something like this, you know. And finally, he said, is there any chance I could get a drum? Well, we bought some drums and put them in the basement, and then he would go down and play the drums, and pretty soon other kids would come over, you know, they'd all go down the basement. And then, of course, as he grew up, he wanted to further his career, and he said, Dad, I'm going to go to Philadelphia. That was kind of a hotbed for groups. Right. And, you know, I'll give Bun, you know, he did not ask for any money. Dad, I'll get by. He got in a little apartment, you know, and he ate hamburgers and Cokes, and then he got connected with Rick and a few others, and then they came back to Rockford, and eventually Cheap Trick got going, you know, and it was a great experience for Bun, and they're very successful.
Well, just got back, been gone too long. Was it my IT didn't pull a trigger? I'm just so glad to be back home.
He's traveled the world with them.
Oh yeah. In fact, just a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, they played out in Hollywood, and we all flew out there to see him. They were there 2 or 3 days, and you know, Bun has been a tremendous pleasure, in the family. Yeah. And Mark went 4 years to college at Wake Forest, and in the summers he worked on the roofs. And when he came home, he said, I said, Mark, what do you really want to do? He says, Dad, I'd like to be a doctor. And so he sent out letters, you know, that summer. He got a call from a professor just to see how he was at home from Wake Forest. Yeah. And they were talking on the phone, and Mark said, well, yeah, I'd like to be a doctor, you know. And he said, Mark, come on back to Wake Forest, and you'll be a resident of North Carolina, and you can go to Bowman-Gary College, medical school. And then, of course, he said, Dad, can you help? And so then I helped him, of course, and he's always appreciated that. And then when he finished his medical career, then, of course, his 2 years of internship. Right. So he went in Winston-Salem. And then when he got through the 2 years, he said, Dad, I've got an offer for 3 years to go to New York to a Jewish hospital. I'll be the only Protestant that they've ever hired. Right. And he said, but it's a tremendous opportunity because of the new techniques. And so he went there. And I remember we went out to see him, and I had a marquee, a nice marquee, only 2 or 3 years old. And we drove all the way out there, and he had a Volkswagen. Right. And it was just about falling apart. So I told Vi, I said, Vi, let's leave our car and we'll fly back to Rockford. Well, he never forgot that. But he came back to Rockford and set up his practice. He's done very, very well. Yeah, he's done great. And of course, Edwin was the youngest. Yeah. And he worked on the roofs. And then he followed Kurt in the roofing business. Okay. And was Kurt's assistant and learned the roofing business. And Jan, my daughter, she had 6 children, wonderful kids. And she married a Hutterite from North Dakota, and a wonderful family, and they've been very good. And then of course Jenny, my daughter, she married Randall Kittle, and he's an eye doctor, and so we've had a wonderful family, and they've all stayed in Rockford. That's been really a blessing for us, is that they stayed in Rockford. So we have reunions, and so it's just great. We have a wonderful, close family. Yeah, so that, I mean, I think, yeah, because you read in an obituary where one son is in Oklahoma, one son's in California. But it's been just great for our family, so we're very close, the whole family. One thing, when I came back from the war, got married, then we went to Bradley University for 1.5 years, I think it was. But in the service, there was a fellow by the name of Fulton, Sol Fulton, and he was like 45 years of age, and here I'm in my 20s.
Sure.
And he helped us young fellas in the city play baseball and sports, basketball. And he became a real close friend, and was very kind to us young fellas. But anyways, he had graduated from Wake Forest. And so when he gets back to Wake Forest, he called me on the phone, and he said, or then I got a call from the basketball coach at Wake Forest, and he says, Carlson, we want you to come to Wake Forest. We're going to free.
Right.
But I had, about a week before, I wanted to go to college, and Bradley University in Peoria, I had signed a contract to go down there. So I lost that opportunity to go to, but later on, just think, Kurt he had just been born. Yeah. Later on, Sol was still living, and he was a good friend of Kurt's in Winston-Salem through the years. But anyways, after I came back, and then I wanted to, it was 1945, when I came back to Rockford after the war. And I wanted to go back to college and become a coach, a basketball coach or a baseball coach. My dad and I went to a meeting at East High School, and Coach Laude, who my high school coach, was there. And my dad talked to him, and I was right there. And he said, you know, Coach, I would like to have Ed go in the roofing business with his brother. And he said, but he wants to be a coach. And you know, Coach Laude, without even thinking, turned to me and says, Ed, you can be a coach right here in Rockford. We need coaches and help these young kids play baseball and basketball. And he said, and you can go to work at the roofing company and make your dad happy. and I told that to my wife when I got home. She says, you know, let's stay in Rockford. So I mean, this is a case where your dads can really help determine your future. Absolutely. And that turned out to be real good. And then of course, later on I got into baseball and coaching teams and that. And then I met Randy Randerson. He was a sheriff's deputy, and he had started the Pony League in Rockford. And then I became very good friends. And then I began sponsoring teams. At one time, I'd sponsored 5 teams, and Pony League and Bronco League. And so then a neighbor of mine was Wally Gale. His father owned the Gale Cemetery out there, way out on Meridian Road, Roy Gale. And then we were looking for baseball diamonds and some land. And so Wally said, let me talk to my dad. So we met with his father, and Mr. Gale said, listen, we have over 100 acres way south. Yeah. Well, we won't need that for cemeteries for 100 years. Right. He said, take whatever you want and just use it. Okay. And build your baseball park. So I mean, it was a wonderful gift by Mr. Gale. Yeah. And then of course we built 1 diamond, 2 diamonds. Now there's about 10 diamonds out there. And then we got involved with the Pony League baseball. Sure. One other thing I want to say. Yeah. In the roofing business. Yeah. In the 1960s or so, Dave put me in charge of the roofers and then to drive a truck and different things. I got a call from a young fellow, and Erikson, his name was. Yeah. And he said, Ed, he said on the phone, he said, I know one of your foremen, Mike Minnick. And he said, we got a big job and he needs more help. He said, could I come and work at the roofing company? And I said, why, sure, Don Erikson. He said, you know, I'm 6'6" and I weigh almost 300 pounds. And he said, my dad is in the real estate business. My dad said, I can't go to work unless I lose some weight and look good, you know. So he says, I'm going to work hard. And he did. He worked, he shoveled gravel. He lost about 50 pounds that year.
But it was just 300. He could have played tackle for the Bears or the Vikings.
But anyways, about a year later, Dave and I used to go to the roofing company every morning from 8 to 12 on Saturday. And I was in the office there, and I get a call from Don Erikson. And he said, Ed, he said, maybe you wonder what happened to me. He said, now I'm working for my dad in the real estate business. And he said, my dad has a piece of property on East State and Mulford. And he said, I told my dad, I'm going to give Ed Carlson the first chance to buy 30 acres. And so we went out there, I went out there, and then I came back, and Dave was in the office. I took Dave out there, and then the next day I took my uncle out there. And my uncle said, gee, that might be a good place to move our company some days. 30 acres of land, you know, going towards Chicago, toward Belvedere. And so we bought the property. And then after, and then we had Mr. Whitehead put a sign on it. Well, no action for over a year. And then I read in the paper that K-Mart was building in Chicago. And they had moved into Chicago. So I had the girl write a type of letter to Harry Cunningham, CEO of K-Mart.
Right.
You know, in 1 week, I got a letter back, and he says, thank you for thinking of K-Mart. He said, but we're very busy in Chicago. We probably won't come to Rockford for another 1 or 2 years. Within 1 month, a salesman shows up. He wouldn't tell us who he was, but he said, no, I've heard about this property. We're interested in it, but we only want 15 acres.
Right.
But I know the realtor who's Chrysler Realty wants 15 acres, and they would be a good neighbor to us. And we sold the property. Then later on we found out it was K-Mart and then Chrysler Realty, you know. So, but then I took that money, and I we couldn't find places to practice baseball. All the parks were filled up. And so one of the salesmen, George Strum, said, Ed, I know a Greek on 7th Street, and he owns 10 acres on Alpine, North Alpine, way out by Riverside. At that time it was a different name on the road. But he said, so I went out there and took a look at it, and there was kind of a hilly deal there. And so I bought the property, 10 acres. And then the Caterpillar manager talked to one of the fathers of the team, and he said, listen, he said, give me Carlson's phone number. He said, I'll bring a road grader over, and I'll level the whole piece of property. And by golly, he came, and they leveled all the property. And then the dads, we all got together, the fathers of the kids, and we put grass seed on there. And then Gale said, listen, if you need sod, we got sod all over the place out there in the cemetery. And I'll get a sod cutter. And we sodded the whole infield. It was more fun. And then of course we built 1 or 2 more diamonds later on. And then I was there for over 10 years with the baseball park, and that was a great experience. So then my wife said, if we're going to have a baseball diamond, I want a concession stand. And the 2 girls and I, but we'll keep the profits. So I had a carpenter that worked for us, and he built the concession stand, and my wife and the girls sold, you know, popcorn. It was a great experience. But one other little story. My mother had 6 girls and 3 boys in the family, and one of them was Esther Hedlund, and her husband was Hedlund's drugstore. And I didn't realize it at the time. And Uncle Herb would, at least once a week, would come out to the ballpark and sit on the bench and have some popcorn or a hot dog. And he was an encourager. You know, he knew we were doing a great thing for the kids in Rockford, but Uncle Herb was really a good friend of ours through the years.